Welcome back to Hatoraid Live, the Hatoraid Hour podcast. I'm your host, Jordan, aka Hatoraid Cowboy, and we have a very exciting podcast for you today. I have a very special guest who I'm going to introduce here in a minute. But before we do, just a couple housekeeping items. Let's have fun, let's be kind to one another, and let's keep it G rated. All right. So, also let me know who's watching and where you're watching from in the comments. And if you have any questions throughout the live stream, feel free to drop them in there. We'll star them and we'll get to them as we go. All right. Well, I have Richard here. So, oops, let me take my banner down first. So I have Richard here, and Richard is a very special guest. I'm very excited to have him on here. Richard, how's it going, man?
It's going great. Thank you for
Nice.
the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Nice to meet you in person. So, or not in person, but online. So maybe we'll meet it in person one day.
Yeah.
But I'm very excited because Richard has a book. I've got it here with me. It's called Home Theaterology: The Art of Creating the Perfect Home Theater, with forewords by Barry Sonnenfeld. I think I'm saying that right.
Yep. Barry
Eh,
Sonnenfeld. Yep.
Barry Sonnenfeld and Max Weinberg.
Right.
So, if you have read this book, let me know that in the comments. This is an amazing book, but I'm going to let Richard actually tell you more about it. So, first, why don't we have a little bit of backstory? Richard, who are you and what do you do in this industry?
Okay. My company is called Acoustic Smart, and we've been around for almost 30 years, and we've been designing and building private cinemas for a very long time. And what we do is we work with people around the country. We partner with AV dealers who are doing the audio video, and we concentrate on the actual private cinema interiors. So we manufacture the seating, the acoustic treatment, and we design the space. And we take a space that might be ordinary, it just might be a garage, and we take it and we make it into something special, very unique. And we also concentrate on how to make the room sound better, how to isolate the space so the sound doesn't travel throughout the home, because we're experts in that as well. And we also work with various acousticians around the country who are very good friends of ours to make sure that the room is tuned properly so that the audio sounds optimal. It's the best it can be. So the room that we have in back of me that's on the cover of the book was actually completely different when we walked in. It was actually a very small screen, and it was a traditional theater. And the screen was on the opposite wall, actually on the wall in back of me. And we were able to turn the room 180 degrees, gave him a screen that was 5 times the size of what he had before when he purchased the house. It was owned by a famous singer songwriter, and we turned it into this. So this is just an example of what we're capable of. And yeah, so we've been doing this for a long time, and we're still learning. We're still trying to come up with some new stuff, and always learning new tricks and something cool. You know.
Cool. So the background that you're using, that's an actual theater that you guys built.
Yeah, that's actually the cover of the book.
Right.
So we did the showroom for JBL in Northridge, and it was a redo, and it was kind of a small room, so we wanted to look very clean and modern, so the room would look bigger. And these are seats that we make in the back. We call them transformers because it looks like a European club chair with a low back, and then it transforms into a theater seat with a headrest pops open. So if you want it to be audiophile and not cover the back of your head,
Right.
you can do that. And then if you want to watch a movie and have the total comfort for watching all three Godfathers, you can have it open up, and then you're cool. But yeah, so the guy went to JBL and he loved the theater room. So we wanted to duplicate that in this new house that he was building in Nashville. Well, he actually bought it from somebody else, and he completely gutted the whole place, and he retrofitted the theater. You know,
Cool. I mean, yeah, that looks like a pretty, just from the cover of the book and looking at your background, that looks like a pretty cool theater. So we were talking off screen, and we're gonna get into some deeper stuff here. But you
yeah.
were telling me that you've been doing this for about 30 years, and you have a complete turnkey system where you actually make the seats, you do the acoustic treatment, like you from beginning concept to everything in between. You guys do everything, right?
Except for the audio video. So we
Okay.
partner with the AV dealers around the country. The AV dealers are really our partners, and they really have a lot of these clients that are that are pretty much established. Some of them are clients that have been with them for 15 years, and now they want to do a theater, or they have a theater that they did, but it wasn't really done right, or they bought a builder's special, but now they really want to do it right. So they call us up and say, "This is the room. These are the dimensions." Or maybe they might even have like a garage. Like I did my theater in my garage. I lived by the beach, and
Okay.
I didn't have a spot. I can't dig down because I hit water, right? So I had to do it in my garage, and the room was incredible. It's just you have to leave it up to the imagination, whatever you can create. You know, and then every single job has its problem solving. So when you have a garage in my theater, as an example, um, we had a pole right in the center of the room
Mm,
that was blocking my screen, and then I was also wondering how we're going to get to the electric, because the electric box for the entire house was there with all the circuits, which was right in back of the screen.
mm,
So every time a circuit blew, then I would have to take
hmm.
off the screen, which wasn't great, right?
Yep.
We actually had to move that to the left.
And that's not cheap.
No, so we had to create. So we have a custom curtain, and we hid it in back of the curtain so you don't see where the electrical box is. We were able to move it. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't crazy. The beam, having that pole in the middle of the room was more of a problem. So we had to create what's called a flush header, and to make sure that the ceiling was strong enough to hold the second floor above me, so it doesn't collapse and land
Hmm.
in the middle of a movie, especially during an action scene of the blowing up the White House.
Yeah.
The White House before me. So we did all that, and then of course, when another thing that can happen is if you're doing uh, a theater in your garage, you can have a clean out valve for all of your plumbing right in the garage, which I have. So I have a secret, spot in the theater where I can lift up the carpet and get to the clean out valve if I want to.
Hmm.
It's
Okay.
very easily accessed. So all these things you have to think about. And I mean, that's just one case. But every single job that we do, there's a lot of problem solving, because you're trying to.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a very small room, and you have to make it into a larger room, or you're facing a lot of the client wants 3 rows, but the room is really optimal for 2 rows, and you have to figure out what's the best sight line, to make everything work and make it functional, and where to put all the speakers and line everything up.
Cool. So if you're tuning in live, you're just tuning in, we're talking to Richard. He is the author of this book that I have here. Really cool book. Now, you also assist with some forewords by Barry Sonnenfeld. He's a director.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he did all the Men in Black movies. He
Okay. Cool.
did the Lemony Snicket series on Netflix, and he's a fan of well, he's a fan of movies, obviously, but he's a fan of home theater. And we even got him to be the keynote at CEDIA this past year. And according to everybody I talked to, he was probably one of the best keynotes that we've ever had.
Yeah, I wish I would have caught that one.
Yeah, it was really cool. And you know, he was honest, and open. And his big thing is he wants a very simple, clean room, but he wants it to sound good. So the acoustics are really important to him. The quality of the video is important to him, and he likes to smoke his stogies in the theater. Very important to him. We actually had a client once that told us up front, we're going to be smoking a lot of stogies in this room, and I want to have a special ventilation system to get rid of all the smoke. So then after I'm done smoking my stogie, the room is clean. It doesn't smell like smoke. So we had to work with this HVAC contractor to put in a special type of ventilation to get rid of all the smoke. And it actually left the room pretty cold, because it worked so well,
Hmm.
that it drew all the heat out of the room. And then we had to heat up the room again. So, you're always
Hmm.
looking at different things, every time somebody has a request, because it might sound a little crazy to somebody, but to him it was very important, and you got to be able
Right.
to accommodate those requests. It doesn't matter how strange it may seem to you.
Right. Right. So let's talk a little bit about your book. So 30 years in the industry, you decided to write a book. What inspired you to write a book specifically on the art of creating home theater? And was it like a personal passion or like something where there was a gap in the industry that maybe you wanted to, help people?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what happened was, I travel a lot and I do work all around the country. I even do work overseas. And when you're traveling, you'll notice that when you go into architects' office and interior designers' offices, sometimes they don't even know about home theater. They think it's dead, or they think that nobody's doing home theaters anymore, so they don't even specify home theaters. They don't realize how big of a difference this can make in somebody's life. So I was getting frustrated because certain areas like in LA and in New York and in Utah and in Nashville, theaters are huge. Florida, theaters are huge, but you'll go to Houston, let's say, they're not specifying home theaters, but yet you'll go to Dallas and they're specifying a lot of home theaters, and I was saying to myself, like, why is this? What's going on here? And why are these architects and interior designers not tuned in to what we do? Because to me, I mean, I'm passionate about what I do. I love home theater, and that's why I do this. And I'm sure that's why you do this as well, and that's why you have a YouTube channel, because this is something that you're really passionate about. So I didn't want interior designers and architects to talk clients that are doing theaters and tell them that don't do a theater because you'll be sitting in the dark, and it's not the way to go. It's better just to have a big TV and 3 rows of chairs, and that is not the way to go. That is the wrong way to go. So I developed this book to educate architects, interior designers, so they would understand the fundamentals, at least some of the fundamentals. This is not a how-to book, but what is acoustics? Why do we even need acoustics in a theater? I had a job recently that I've talked about in another podcast. We had a beautiful theater lined up, and the interior designer talked the client out of doing a projector and a screen and put in a 100-inch TV for 3 rows of seats. And I'm like, for the first row, that's fine, maybe. The second and third row, that's a postage stamp. That's not gonna be immersive. That's not gonna rock anybody's world. And then what about speaker placement? You're gonna put it back in the TV. It's not gonna happen. So I wanted them to understand the importance of doing theaters right, so much that I talked to some of my friends in the in the industry to actually put pages on the importance of audio calibration, video calibration, and to educate even my AV dealers on why it's important to do the video calibration on a theater room, and why it's important to do audio calibration, tricks of the trade. I even have on the very end of the book my favorite demos that are demos that you don't really know about or people don't really talk about, because how many times have you seen Ready Player One or Maverick? Everybody's bored with that. So I wanted to do other things that people might not know about. It might be, I have some hidden secret demos that are kind of hard to find, but that create magic in the theater room and give you goosebumps. So I wanted to have that. And then I have 15 projects, very unique. I have 2 or 3 projects that are theme rooms, which are not really a theme company, but we do get requests for doing very interesting rooms, theme rooms. Like we have a Lord of the Rings theme theater. We have a James Bond theme room. That was pretty cool for a really good client of mine. And we did his brother's theater as well as this theater. And the room was kind of narrow and we had to think out of the box. And in that particular room, we did something really cool. It was one of the first times we ever did this, where we hooked it up to a kaleidoscope, where we actually have a motorized shade that comes down, and on the shade itself, you have a vision of the famous James Bond scene. When he shoots with his gun, and then you see the blood coming down at the very beginning of the movie. And as that shade is going up with the image of James Bond, it's connected right to a kaleidoscope script, is what it's called. And as the shade is going up with that image of the blood coming down, you start seeing the video of that same
Hmm.
image where James Bond's walking on the
Wow.
screen at the same time, and then it goes out and then it goes to zero. So that's the way he starts every movie. And the entire room is done with what we call smart art, where we take images. We didn't want it to be so obvious with the James Bond, so we made it very cool looking with little secrets and hidden things of James Bond images. And then in the back, we have a secret hidden bar, again with the motorized shade. And on the shade, we laminated a custom print that we made of all the criminals of James Bond. And then when you press the button, that's hooked up to something called an audio request. I don't even think they're in business anymore, but back then when we did it, because that room is almost 15 years old. I mean, it's pretty older. But that would go up, and then you hear the James Bond theme, da 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 da,
Yeah, that's
and
pretty cool.
then he's got some really cool stuff in there. He's got like James Bond, you know, the martini glasses, and then he has like the man with the golden gun, the actual gun from the movie that turns
Hmm.
into a lighter and does all those cool things. So that's it's making use of the space, whatever you have to work with. And there's other, the room it has a continuous flow to it. There's actually secret hidden rooms. That one room takes you to his office, the other one takes you to a
Hmm.
bedroom, but you would never know it's there because it's all covered with the James Bond motif.
That's pretty cool.
You uh, and then you have a lot of other rooms that are just very standard, just very cool rooms. Some that have custom millwork to it. Some have LED lighting like what's in back of me, but everyone is very unique because I wanted to have stuff in the book that would be more for the everyday person. I didn't want it to be so over the top because I wanted it to be very architect and interior designer friendly, because the money from the book, we don't make any money on the book at all. We're actually uh, losing a lot of money on it, but it's a cause worth pursuing, because I want to make sure that home theater is alive and well, and I want to make sure that we grow the market. So the idea is that from people purchasing the book, that gives me the money to go and do events. Like I did an event at Charschan 2 weeks ago where I gave about 60 books to architects, interior designers, and we educated them. And I just did an event last week where we did the same thing. And so we're basically inspiring others, and we're bringing more of the awareness to home theater. And I'm also, when I'm visiting AV dealers around the country, I'm asking them, do you have any architects or AV, any interior designers or architects who you think would be interested in this book? We'll send them a book, you know,
Hmm.
because we want them to be educated. We want them to get excited and to know that home theater is alive and well. And maybe they'll learn something out of this book and say, we should be doing more home theaters. And that creates work for everybody. And it also creates more of the awareness, because I don't want people talking our clients out of doing a home theater and saying a couch with the big TV is the same thing. It's a totally different experience.
Totally different.
And I always tell my clients, you have TVs all over the house. Why would you even go downstairs and watch in this room by yourself? You know, the trick to these theaters, and what makes it so cool, is that you become immersed. You're basically, you're actually not a spectator anymore. You're actually part of the experience, and that's what we want. That's really the message that we want to send. So this book is to show people, you know, you can have a lot of fun in doing something really creative, doing something cool, and inspiring others, to be greater. I don't know what my next project is going to be, but every year is different challenges. We just closed the job recently. It's pretty difficult room, and so after you get the job, you're like, okay, now we just finally got the project, and we've been redesigning this job for a year and a half.
Wow.
That's how difficult,
Just the redesign.
just the redesigning. And now if we got the job, now we have to build it. And some of these things are things that have never been done before. So we got to think outside the box and say, how are we going to build this? We don't know yet. So we have to engineer it and figure it all out, you know? And it's not like it's a theme room like the Lord of the Rings. It's a room with very custom detailed millwork with LED lighting, and you have to be able to have the lighting in there, and be programmed and do all the things that the client wants to do, and it's very demanding. But you have to come through, So that's really where the challenge is. So I'm hoping that people purchase the book, especially for Christmas coming up, and they learn something out of it, and they get excited about home theater. Because that's I'm just sharing the passion that I love.
Yeah, definitely. So, Grave Danger says, "What book are you talking about?" I have the book right here. It
It's
is
right on my
called,
screen.
yeah, it's on the screen, but it's called Home Theaterology: The Art of Creating the Perfect Home Theater. There's a lot of cool information about this. We're talking a little bit more about this. He's got some home theaters that he's done. Let me see if I can pull up the website here. I didn't even think to ask you to provide some images, but let me see if I can.
We
Do
have a
you?
lot on hometheaterology.net, or you can go right to acousticsmart.com, which is my company's website, and you can there's a link to the book right there.
Okay, let me see if this will pull up. Yeah, so let me share, present, share screen.
And then the other forward for the book is written by the drummer for Bruce Springsteen's band, who is has been a good friend for a very long time as well.
That's pretty cool. So Bruce
Yeah,
Springsteen, huh?
just yeah.
So this is the website. You've got some featured theaters here.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff in there. You have, and then we even have videos of some of the rooms on our website. We like to take videos of some of the rooms because sometimes, with photographs, you can only do so much. You can
Right.
only, it's hard to get the feel. So this we have a drive-in movie theater, uh, and
A
the guy,
drive-in movie theater?
yeah, the guy literally wanted
Interesting.
to drive the car. Yeah, if you go into
Wow.
Deluxe, right there, you see it.
This one?
Want to click on that? Yeah, yeah. The guy literally, it was 2009, and we were, yeah. I don't know what's going on when it's not.
Yeah, for some reason when sharing it, it's not letting me. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, but anyway, you can see it in the picture over there. But uh, the guy, I was working with this guy for 3 months, and the client just bought a new car, and he said, you know what, I don't think we're going to do the theater after all. I just got a new car, and I really need a spot for the car, so I'd rather do that than do the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And this is after 3 months of redesigning and designing and trying to make sure that we really exceed this guy's expectations, because it was in the middle of the recession. We wanted to really do something great and keep everybody busy, because I manufacture everything. I have a whole team of artisans and people who work for me, and we manufacture our own seating and everything. So here, you can see in the picture, you can see the motorized shade going up, and
That's
this is him
crazy.
driving into the theater, like the way Bruce Wayne would drive into the Batcave. And
That's pretty cool.
so as I was walking outside of his house, I thought we lost the project, and I said to him, I don't even know why I said, why don't you just drive the car into the theater and have it on display. And he stopped me in my tracks right before I went to my car, and he says, "That's a great idea. Can we do that?" And I said, "I think we can. And that's what we did. And then we built a wine cellar, and then we have a secret door that takes into the adjacent theater. So it's like a complete man cave that we did for him. And
Wow.
it just came out of the request from the client. So there's a lot of cool things in the book, like this, of a situation where somebody came to us, and we had to create something out of nothing, out of a request from the client.
Yeah, because there's no precedent for something like that. I mean, I if you hadn't told me that, I would have never even known. I would never even thought of having a drive-in home theater. Like to
Yeah,
me, that's just way over the top. But that's what the client wants. So
yeah, he can literally watch a movie uh, from the inside of his car,
that's
like when you drive
crazy.
a movie, and look at the screen.
That's
And then
pretty
he
cool.
has a shade that comes down, so when he's having drinks at the bar, he can close the shade down so you don't see the car. And then when you want to show it off, you press a button, and then you see the shade go up. Yeah.
So that's a good segue into aesthetics, because that, I mean, that by itself, I'm looking at some of this other stuff, but that by itself is very technical. So how do you balance the technical aspects of home theater setup with the aesthetic and experiential elements, and which do you consider more critical to the perfect home theater?
It's really a marriage of both. You can't have one without the other. So with the Lord of the Rings theater, okay, um, or the Egyptian theater, the Pharaoh theater. The client was a big, like in that Egyptian theater, the client was a big fan of the movie Stargate.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yep.
I wasn't too familiar with the TV show. I saw the movie. I liked the movie. He was more of a fan of the TV show, so he wanted to feel like you were walking into the Stargate into like an Egyptian tomb. So the first thing that came to my mind, well, you have to make it look like a tomb. You have to have stone, brick, like Egyptian stone, with the yellowish, sand color.
Mm-hmm.
So, we ended up. It took us about 3 months, but we were able to find an image of the stone that looked pretty real. We had like about 5 different prints. We can actually uh, take an image of whatever, like of anything, print it on breathable fabric, and that becomes the fabric for your acoustic treatment. And it's breathable enough where you can hide speakers in the back of it. So when you look at it, when it's on the walls, it looks like stone. Like that actually looks like stone. When
That's
when you're
crazy.
there, you can't even tell that's not stone until you go up and touch it, and you realize that's not stone, that's fabric. That's how
Wow.
good we got it. And then to do all the cool stuff with the Egyptian pharaohs and columns, we have friends of ours who do sets for TV and things like that, and they partner with us with their shop, and we create all sorts of really cool stuff. And then when we did the Lord of the Rings theater, we did the same kind of a thing where we, you
Is
know,
that one on here?
yeah, it's there. That one he wanted. There's the Theater of Legends.
Oh, okay.
He wanted stamped concrete, so it would feel like you're walking into like a real castle. And like you see those windows on the side, there's a TV in there. That's not a real window. That's a TV that's hooked up to the kaleidoscope on a script also. So when the movie's about to start, the dragons attack the castle. You actually see the dragons on the TV in the script. It only happens, like, takes about 30 seconds. Then the dragons come on.
Man,
So all of that stone, that's not real. That's all that stone on the walls is printed on breathable acoustic fabric, and that room sounds unbelievable.
interesting.
We have pro audio speakers in there, and those seats were all custom made in our shop, and they have articulated headrest, and that's his family crest right on the headrest.
Interesting.
That's his family crest. And then this was all custom. That image was an image that he gave us that was low res, and we had to figure out a way to up convert that into high res and do the special printing of it. Uh, and then a lot of these artifacts we got from Europe, like the gargoyles and all that stuff, and the chains. you know, it's uh,
That's
it's pretty
insane.
wild thrown.
So are these? Is this like a? So like this room or some of the other rooms? Are these just bare rooms that you start from the very beginning? Are there walls up, or is it just
That
pre-construction?
that was a retrofit. That room was he had another theater before that he did with somebody else. They had a very bad experience. It was a Game of Thrones room, uh, and he really wanted this. His wife didn't want to go through it again, and the AV dealer at the time, he knew of us, and he said, "I'm telling you, if you work with Acoustic Smart, you're not going to have these issues. They're not going to make a mess." Apparently, the other guy, there was dust all over the house, and it took forever. And the experience on this theater went so well that the client that became friends of ours. They're super sweet people, and they loved the whole experience. And also the other guy that did the last theater with him, Didn't do any acoustic treatment, like real acoustic treatment. It was all DAC run, and
What?
charged them like a lot of money. I was kind of shocked by the whole thing. So he never really experienced the room done right, and I talked him into going into a storm audio processor and just tuning the room and just doing some things that I knew that would make a difference. He was startled, really startled with the results, and
Yeah,
the
I
AV
bet.
was the audio was so good. I remember we were watching a scene. I can actually feel the raindrops like on my shoulder. It
Nice.
was so good, you know. Um, yeah, so just things like that make it all worthwhile because then the client in the end they're selling it back to me, you know.
Right.
Because in the beginning it's just really an idea, and then we bring it to life. You know?
I'm looking at this theater. This looks. I know that this is like a lot of lights for a home theater. Obviously, you can turn them off. This looks beautiful, man. I love the contrast. Like I'm the type of person like everything. My dad always laughs because whenever he comes over, he's like, "Man, why is everything black in here?" And I'm like, "One, I love black, but I mean, in a theater, I want everything to be as dark as possible. I have some smart lights, nothing like this, but I mean, this is beautiful, man.
This room is unbelievable. I
That
mean,
looks incredible.
the room was so difficult. It's all done with shades and LED lighting, shading, and there was such detail in this room. You have no idea. Like my guys were sweating. Like all of the so you can do this room less expensive by just painting all the reveals and where the LED lights are. You know, not going to the extent that we did, but we put there's little tiny, and I mean tiny pieces of fabric in every one of the reveals so that when the light is hitting it, you don't see horrible looking paint that's not finished. You know, every little part of it is just, it's so elegant. And this was based on a design that somebody saw that was done for a musician. And they wanted something similar to this. Uh, but they wanted it done right. They wanted it done right acoustically, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean this.
And
That
it's room.
sounds and looks meticulous, and I'm sure it sounds. So what's the specs in this? Like, what are they running for speakers and?
Speakers. I believe this was a JBL synthesis room.
Hmm.
The projector was a Sony.
Yeah,
Uh,
I can see the projector. Sony.
yeah, it was a JBL synth room, and I think the processor was also the JBL synthesis,
Okay,
Dolby Atmos, and all that. Uh, and it's a big room, so we need a lot of power. You know,
it looks big.
yeah. We actually did one a theater that was the biggest theater in the United States. There's a house, if you look it up online, called The One. It's in Bel Air, and
Bel Air, Houston,
Bel Air in California, like in Los
California. Okay.
Angeles. And the house was 117,000 square feet or something like that, like something
Jesus,
crazy. And the theater was the size of a commercial theater.
that's
You can see
crazy.
some images on it on our Instagram. If you go to the Acoustic Smart Instagram,
Okay.
you'll see it there. Um, but yeah, it's every theater is different. So on that one, they had custom JBL. They actually had to use the commercial JBL speakers because the screen was so big. When I say the screen was the size of a house, it was the size of a house. I mean, it was huge. So that
That's
was
wild.
that was really a trip for us to get involved in that. I actually have an image of my foreman standing in the center channel speaker. That's how big it was. He was standing inside of it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So are you able to say like what does something like this cost?
Um, so we have a lot of rooms that can be between 150 and 250,000 for the interior only. All right. And then we have rooms that could be more than that. It depends on the size of the room. If there's a lot of millwork in it, because the millwork obviously adds to the cost.
Right.
There's LED lighting. Um, but we've done work all around the country, and even when we fly our crews out, we're more reasonable than some of the local guys. And I don't know why
Hmm.
that is. but we're just very efficient in how we do things and how we build things. Um, it's all about the project management and how you build them. So on this job that we did in California, the really big one, it might have taken somebody just to do the construction and build that maybe 2 months. We did the whole thing in 3 weeks.
Man.
We pre-built it in our shop, all the different skeleton walls, and we brought it on a flatbed. And our crew came there. The contractor was blown away how fast it took, and how accurate it was.
So Grave Danger says, I was previously told half the equipment budget should be spent on speakers. Do you find that to be true?
No, that's not true. It's a combination of everything. I think it's you need, it depends on the size of the room. It depends, when you tune the room correctly acoustically, and the room is tuned optimally. I've done rooms even with the receiver that sound amazing, but obviously you have separates, they'll always sound better. But I'm always amazed, and just if the processor doesn't have to work as hard, it's amazing what you can do to the room.
Mm-hmm.
I like using processors that are dedicated processors like a Trinoff or like Storm Audio,
Storm.
where you can really get into it and calibrate it and figure out ways to really get into the subs, and tune them, because that's really where you get a lot of your problems. You get the boominess of the subs, and make sure you do all the distances right, from where you're sitting and all that good stuff, and make sure you don't over dead in the room. But yeah, so as far as equipment goes, budget, I mean, it's up to whatever you can afford. But there's so many different options out there. When I first started, just to get a 3-gun, a projector, and a Ferrugia line doubler back then, which is what they used to have. I mean, I think it was like, for the line doubler, it was probably even more than 20 grand just for the line doubler. And the projectors were not nearly as good as they are now, and they were expensive. They were like a fortune, like
Yeah.
30 grand for that, 30 or 40 grand. Now, what you can get with a Sony or JVC for that, you don't even need the line doubler. Now you have NAD, VR, and all that stuff, which is basically what a Ferrugia line doubler did, but a lot more detailed, a lot more, you can do a lot more with it, because the technology for the NAD VR is pretty incredible. So it just takes it, what the Ferrugia line doubler did, it just takes it to a whole other level. So all these things make a difference. And now the aspect ratio has also changed now. So now you're doing theaters where the aspect ratio is 2.39 or 2.40.
Netflix and Amazon, all those.
Yeah,
They're
and
doing
then
different ones.
with Amazon, you have this 2.0, which is like in between the two. So grave danger, that's a very difficult. It's going to put me in grave danger, because that's like that's a difficult question to answer, because it's based on whatever you can afford. I've been in rooms where we just did placement of acoustic treatment, and they had a really good processor and a good amp and some, you know, nice speakers, but nothing over the top crazy. And the room just sounded killer because they tuned the room right and they did the basics right. So as long as you do the basics right, uh, your room will sound and perform amazing. We do that as a starting point, and then we take it to the next level by doing these rooms to create, like, like an aesthetic, really. Now the lifestyle projectors are looking pretty nice to me.
So
Yeah.
that's a good segue too, because you mentioned it earlier about how, like, you had to, it was a redo or remodel of someone who was unhappy, and then, like this question here. So what are the common mistakes that people make when designing their home theaters, and how does your book help readers to avoid them?
Say that one more time.
What are the most common mistakes that people make when designing their home theaters, and how does your book help readers to avoid them?
Okay. Well, again, the book is not a how-to book, but I guess one of the things it'll definitely talk about is the value of acoustics, the importance of sightline studies. I guess one of the biggest things that I've seen as far as a mistake goes is when people are buying these LED walls, these the video walls. They're buying them before the room has even been designed, and then they have 3 rows of seats, and they get into big trouble because they already have the TV, and they didn't do what's called a sightline study. So what happens is you have a big TV now, but only 1 row out of the 3 rows can see the entire screen.
Hmm.
Rows 2 and 3 will only see half the screen. It just happened for a basketball player, famous basketball player who we did a job for. And I felt so bad. And it was a well known theater design firm that was working on it. And we ended up taking it over. And, we were able to help, but we can only do so much, because the screen was already purchased. So doing a sightline study, and making sure that your screen, I know everybody wants a big screen, but you don't want to have a screen go all the way down to the floor.
Hmm.
You got to be at least 38, 40 inches above the floor to have more than 1 row of seats on
Interesting. That's
every
the first
desk.
time I've heard someone's actually say that, because a lot of people, yeah, they say, why not just go, floor to wall? I mean,
You can
floor,
only do
sitting to
that.
floor.
You can only do that if you have 1 row of seats,
Hmm. Interesting. Okay.
and that's not a bad thing to do. We have a client right now. We're doing a theater. I talked him out of doing, and I make my own seating, so I make more money from selling more seats. And I talked him out of purchasing more seats. I said, this room can be so cool. Just do a U-shaped sofa, you know, and we'll fit as many people as we can, and just do a gigantic screen, and that'll be awesome. Then you can put the sofa away from the wall, so we have
Yep.
perfect acoustics, and then it's like you're in a commercial movie theater right in your home, you know. And he was like, "No, I don't know. My wife is going to kill me." Like this whole thing, And when it was all said and done, he was like, "Oh my god, I had no idea it could be like this." And now it's his favorite room in the house. But you got to think outside the box. I've had clients um, almost kick us out of the house because they've been to 3 other theater design companies, and they said the room's got to be this way, but that would be the obvious way to do it. But then the next day, and we actually showed them on paper how it could work if we do it the other way. The next day, he called us up apologizing. He said, "I can't believe it. You're 100% right. I just couldn't see it in my own head until I saw it on paper." And because his brother lives right next door to him, and he did it with somebody else, and he did it, the easiest way. He did it the way that might be the most obvious, but it's not the best for the room. We did the optimal way to do it, so he would have a better experience. And when he saw the difference, he was like, "Oh my god!" And then his brother ended up redoing his theater with us years later.
Nice.
So that's kind of what happens.
And that makes sense, because I've always in my head, because I was always like, man, that'd be cool to have, ceiling to floor. But I'm like, you have to be so, if you have multiple rows, you have to be so far back from the screen, and have the second row so high up so that the people in front of you aren't in the way of the screen. So that, I mean, that makes sense. If I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, if you have 1 row of seating, then yeah, you can absolutely do, ceiling to floor, because there's nobody behind you. There's nobody, that you have to clear. But when you have especially if you have 2 or 3 seats or 2 or 3 rows, like, you have to have enough space from the screen to the front row, and then still go higher. And if you've only got, 8, 10 foot ceilings, now you're running into different issues. So
Yeah, like a room like this, you have 3 rows of seats. I always tell people to do their platforms at least 6 foot 6 deep. Go 7 feet if you can, if you have the room, but go 6 foot 6 inches at least. Because if you do only 6 feet, uh, you'll be reclining into the person in back you, even if you have a wall hugger mechanism, you know, because we make our own chairs. So I know what the clearances are and what it takes. We even now make chairs that are zero clearance, where they take up no room. So it will be impossible for you to recline into the person in back you. And that's a solution. Sometimes you have a bar counter, right? Like in the
yep.
last row. And with the zero clearance, you can put it right up against the bar counter, whereas with a regular seat, you'd have to have a gap there, a space that looks ugly. and now you're also moving everybody up, all the rows up now 6 inches closer to the screen. So now your screen would end up being smaller. So the idea is by having zero clearance and everybody moving away from the screen, it helps giving everybody a better sight line and giving you a better screen and a better optimal experience.
Okay. So let's talk about something a little bit different because we have, when you're building a home theater, obviously, you want everything to be high fidelity. You want, your 4K, your
HDR,
HDR, Dolby Vision, HDR10 plus, all that stuff. But
right?
one thing that's really taken over, and I only subscribe to one or two streaming services. Actually, pretty much one because I have Amazon Prime, but I have Amazon Prime for the 2-day shipping, not for the streaming service. But one thing that's taking over, and that's I think hurting. I think it's good to have, but it's hurting. You know, 4K Blu-rays and Blu-rays is streaming. So in the era of streaming and basically instant, everybody wants to be able to watch content instantly and binge it. In the era of streaming and constantly advancing technology, how do you address the challenges of keeping a home theater setup future-proof?
Well, so the interior is pretty much done. Uh, that's really not changing. Your screen, if you get a CinemaScope screen or a 2.4 row aspect ratio screen, that's not really changing. Your projector, if you get a laser, that's probably not changing either. Your processor these days, all of your processors are pretty much they're upgradable through the internet, so they're future proof. Especially if you get, I'll say it again, Scom Audio or one of these companies that make really good processors. I mean, they're pretty much a future proof product. And then if you get a Kaleidoscape, um, then you're getting the quality of a first run movie. And you're getting the same quality as a Blu-ray right in your house because it's not streaming anymore. You're getting it, it's downloading onto your server, then you're watching it from your server. And there's a big difference between the audio, and I don't sell Kaleidoscape, I don't sell any audio at all, so I have no skin in the game, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But from experience, and they are sponsoring my book, Kaleidoscape, and so is Storm, but they're only in my book because I'm a fan of their product. I don't sell their product. It's not even something that we do. We're an interior companies and we work with people, who purchase and buy these products. But a lot of our theaters have the Kaleidoscape, and we recommend it to people because the truth of the matter is, like, if you went to Disney Plus and watched the movie Ratatouille, let's say, okay, and in Ratatouille, there's a scene when he's I think it's like the opening scene and it's pouring raining out and
Mm-hmm.
you hear the rain around you and it's there, but then you listen to that same scene on the Kaleidoscape. The picture, I must say, is pretty close. It's still better on the Kaleidoscape, but the picture on streaming is pretty damn good these days.
Yeah.
uh, but the audio, the difference is so drastic. You hear the rain literally coming down all around you. So on an audio front, especially concerts, things like that, it is truly night and day. And as far as technology, so once your theater is set up, I think streaming is just getting better and better and better. And I noticed that now you're seeing the Dolby Vision logo on Netflix and on Amazon Prime and on Apple TV,
Hmm.
and they're getting better. I mean, to be technical, you have Roku and then you have Apple TV. I noticed on the Apple TV on some of the streaming services, certain movies, they don't know how to decode them properly, and they decode them in stereo instead of the full signal for Dolby Digital, or it's done. I forget what it's called, but it doesn't it doesn't give you the Dolby Digital signal. But on the Roku, the Roku box because I have both in our showroom because it's like a lab. We're always
Hmm.
experimenting with different things, and I've even done Fire
The pass
TV.
through.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's more of a pass through on the Apple TV sometimes, and whereas on the Roku box you're getting full sound of Dolby Digital, and you know there's a big difference there. There's nothing worse than watching a 007 movie that you're excited to watch, and then it's only coming out of left and right speaker, and you're like, "Oh, this is so lame." And then I end up going to the Roku box just to from the same service just to see what's going on, and all of a sudden I got my 5.1 back. It's like the craziest thing. I was like, "Why is this happening?" But then you look at the Apple TV, and the video on the Apple TV looks phenomenal.
Yep.
Sometimes it looks better than the Roku. So there's that trade off. But I think sound is even more powerful than the video. There have
Yep.
been studies where there's two rooms. In one room, you have a small TV and amazing sound, and the other one, you have an amazing picture where the sound's not so good. And the people end up hanging out in the room with the better sound and the smaller TV and the picture that's not so great because people get more attuned to their senses, you know?
Hmm. Same.
So
Yeah. If you told me I could only ever have 1080p for the rest of my life, but I get the best audio that I can get. I'm choosing that every day over, lossy. I mean, because that's the thing with streaming. Even if it didn't used to be, we didn't used to have Dolby Atmos on streaming, and now we do. But what a lot of people don't understand is that's a lossy signal. It's not uncompressed. It's a
right.
lossy signal. So even though you're still getting height activity and stuff around, it's not the fidelity is not as good. And and that's why I don't really, unless it's something like I can only watch this on Disney Plus. It's an original show. I'll rather just wait and watch it, either on my Kaleidoscape or the 4K Blu-ray because I mean, some people don't notice it. I instantly notice it, especially with streaming. I usually have to bump up my processor 6, 7, 8 dB sometimes just to get it to where, like, okay, I think this sounds how it's supposed to be, but even then, it sounds compressed. It sounds,
It's
you
so
know,
boomy. It just
yep,
sounds. I mean, there is such a big difference. I mean, if you don't have a great system and you just have uh, a bunch of speakers on like a little strip underneath the TV, it's not going to make a difference. But if you have a home theater setup that's done right, uh, you're not gonna just sounds it sounds muddy to me. I mean, I do the same thing, but I'm a purist.
right,
Another thing is, um, a lot of my clients, uh, they'll go onto YouTube and just watch music on YouTube because the quality of the audio on YouTube is so friggin' good. I did a theater for Rockstar in California, and I was going to come by and do like a demo disc, and I brought my disc, and he's like, I don't have a Blu-ray player. Well, what are you watching all day? He says, I just go onto YouTube, and I'm like, why would you go onto YouTube? Like, what's there? And he showed me. I was like, oh, my jaw dropped. There was so much content. He says, I can spend like a month here and never see it, and not see everything. There are so many concerts, and the
that's
audio is
crazy.
so good. A lot of them are done right in the studio, so the quality is
Mm.
just insane. You know, and that's probably one of the things I love doing best because like a lot of times I'm working late until 10 o'clock, and my room is my place to go and escape, and I sort of chill in there, and I'll go onto YouTube and just watch some music, and it's the most amazing it's the most amazing thing that you can do. Or you invite some friends over, put on a little concert, have some wine, you chill. It's freaking awesome.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. I do that too. I'm always watching, um, you know, singers and concerts, and then I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan, so sometimes I'll come across, like someone posted a 2 hour video of a Hans Zimmer concert, and yeah, it's just gonna sound better on Kaleidoscape, but it still sounds pretty good on YouTube. So
Yeah, it's freaking awesome. Check out Jam in the Van, and you'll be happy you
jam
did.
into that. Okay,
And check out the audio on any of those things. You'd be like, oh my god, it's pretty audiophile.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
come a long way. So,
Yeah.
do you have a favorite home theater setup that you've either seen or that you built yourself? I know we were going through some of them on on the website, and if you do, what about it made it stand out as like this is like the perfect home theater experience?
Well, as far as the most fun, I would say the Lord of the Rings theater was probably the most fun to build, and the audio on that really kind of blew my mind, um, honestly. Uh, and the one that we looked at before this one, the one that had all the different shades, the black and white,
Yeah,
uh,
that's I think that's my favorite one so far. Right
that
here, Symphony
is,
of Light.
it's so classy and so beautiful, and you really feel like you're in another world when you come in there. And the audio in that space is just, it's remarkable. You know, it really is. I mean, and also different speakers have different sound. So I like JBL synthesis a lot. I like for watching movies. They're also a sponsor in our book. I mean, I'm a fan of their product. In my own theater, I have Tannoy, which you can't even get anymore. Because
What's is that? Their speakers?
yeah, I worked in recording studios my whole life, and I was in a
Mm.
band. And I still play. I play with the industry C Pro band for Cedia,
Oh, okay, cool.
and those speakers have dual concentric tweeters. So they're not the kind of speakers where you listen to them and you go ooh and ah. You kind of you forget that there's speakers in the room, and
Hmm.
you feel like somebody opened up the door and let the band in. You know,
Nice.
that's kind of what those speakers do. And but I also noticed that when you mix it with different amps, it changes the sound, even changing the power and the quality of your power, which I talk about in the book. It makes a big difference. I started, my friend works for Audio Quest that makes cables and
Hmm.
special
Yep.
outlets and power conditioners.
Very
And
controversial
yeah,
to
and
some.
let me tell you something, man. I changed the outlet to one of their outlets. I thought it was going to be hocus pocus. I was like, I couldn't believe what a difference it made.
Stuff
And
works.
their cables, uh, it's real stuff. So all those things make a difference. And the best thing I can tell your audience to do is listen, and because speakers are very personal. If you want more movies, then maybe you go uh, to like to JBL Synthesis, or if you want more slam, you go to this company, or you go to Paul Hales's company. Makes a great speaker that's very audiophile. Also, we did the Lord of the Rings theater with that one. That sounded great. I mean, there's so many great companies right now. James makes some really good product right now. Focal is making some really good speakers right now. Kef is making great speakers right now. There's so many opportunities, but you have to listen to what works for you. You
Hmm.
know, um, so it's personal. And if you're like me, all the people who helped me in this book are guys who are not just enthusiasts, but they're constantly striving and searching to be the best at whatever they do, and to try to create the perfect cinema, to get the perfect picture, to get the perfect audio. 20 years from now, they'll still be tweaking their gear, trying to get the room to
Yep.
sound. They will never be satisfied, never.
Never.
And it's the curse of being in this business and being an audiophile. You will never be satisfied. It's like people who love cars. You're always going to buy that next car, and you'll be fine for like a year, and then you'll be craving that next car. It's like addiction. And
Yep.
the same with audio. And I'm always listening. I'm like, shit, can we get that bass a little bit better? Can we make it sound even like they're more in the room? I want to feel closer to that kick drum. What can I do to make that happen? And I'll be there probably till I'm in my 90s trying to figure out how to do that, even though I can't probably hear the bass by
I
then.
was gonna say our hearing would probably not be as good, but
Yeah. Well, being a musician, I had to halt a lot of that because I was constantly wearing, headphones and doing mix downs and playing with live drummers, and that can really, that can definitely do damage. So as I'm getting older, I'm trying to limit that so I can still enjoy my hearing and go to concerts and do the things I love to do.
Cool. Well, let's I guess why don't we close up by so you mentioned something that we could talk about here for a few
Yeah,
minutes.
those are some demo scenes. There's a lot.
Yeah,
Well,
that you said are different that a lot of people because I mean I mean I still use them whenever we go to home theaters. Your Ready Player Ones, your Top Gun Mavericks. Those are your because they're so good because you get pretty much everything. You get the dynamics, you get the bass, you get the high atmospherics and stuff. But you said that you have some little hidden gems that most people don't know about. Now I haven't seen all of these. I haven't seen Last Night in Soho. I haven't seen it. I'm not a horror person, so I can't do that. But
that is not a horror movie. It's not a horror movie.
okay. So why don't you tell us how did you come up with these scenes? I see the Patriot. Like I've never would have thought. Apocalypse Now. Help, Seal. So
That seal is very hard to find. It's a
yeah, I can tell he looks young.
import. That's an import, and it's live in a church. And the imaging on the acoustic guitars on that is friggin' mind blowing. It is just it'll blow your socks off. It's super hard to find. I got to meet him, and
Oh, cool.
you know, and back then it was the VHS, and then it was a laser disc, and I got him to sign the laser
Mm,
disc. He doesn't sign for
wow.
anything. And then I saw it was available on DVD. I couldn't believe it. And it's friggin' insane. On Apocalypse Now, there's a famous opening with the helicopter, and you hear the helicopter go around the room 360 degrees, and then you hear Jim Morrison of the Doors singing "This Is the End," and it's pretty cool. I mean, that should be number one of the number one. And on the Patriot, uh, there's a scene on the Kaleidoscape from that movie called Birth of a Ghost, where you hear people. It's basically like an attack scene when he becomes who he becomes, and it's such a dramatic scene. The scene is incredible, and you hear the shots firing all the way in the back of the room, to the left of the room. The guys are talking, screaming to the left of you and to the right of you, trying to distract him so he doesn't shoot his men. And it's like you're in the middle of the act. It's like you're actually in the middle of the scene.
Hmm.
It's so freaking cool the way they did it. So that is something I use that demo a lot. And people are like, oh my God, I felt like I was in the middle of that scene with Mel Gibson. I mean, honestly, I don't think Maverick sounds that great. I think that Top Gun, the remix in Atmos, sounds better than that. The other thing is you don't hear people talk about it, but Beatles movies, they remastered them all. Try watching the movie Help. Listen to any one of those songs. The imaging on that is frightfully good. It is on DVD. I'll play it for people on DVD, not
Wow.
even on Blu-ray, and they'll be like, "Holy crap!" You hear it's like they're in the room with you. It's insane.
I think they were kind of. I mean, I haven't listened to all their albums. My brother had a couple of them, and they were. I feel like they were a little bit ahead of their time with how they mixed a lot of their vocals and a lot of their. And I'm sure like remixing that they probably did it for. But like,
Of
yeah,
the remakes, when they did the remixing, it never sounded like that in the '60s. I can tell you that. It's
right.
literally like you're in the studio, but they created stereo by accident. It was all the mixes were in mono, and the stereo came in later.
Interesting.
I was invited to Electric Ladyland Studios, where Jeff Emmerich was there, and he was showing us the mono mixes and how the mono mixes were better than the stereo mixes, because in the stereo mixes, the drums were only on one side, and the bass and the electric were on the other side, and the vocals
Hmm.
were on the same side as the drums. But it was basically like a mistake that came during pressing, and people loved it, so they used it as a marketing tool. But the remixes, they totally remixed it. The Yellow Submarine, it's like they recorded it last week. It's so good. The Let It Be Naked without the Phil Spector stuff on that. That mix, the drums, the bass, It's incredible. Uh, and then I'll leave one more, and then I got a boogie because I'm actually going to go see Gladiator 2 tonight.
Oh, okay. Nice.
But so a lot of people don't know about this, and this is, but there's a lot more in the book. But um, when you can only get this by getting the history of the Eagles. You cannot get this anyplace else. There's a secret disc that comes with it that's live from 1977 with the original members of the Eagles, with Randy Meisner on the bass singing "Take It to the Limit," and Glenn Frey when he was still alive with them, and the entire band with Joe Walsh. This is them in their prime, and they remastered the entire mix. Um, and the mix is so good, you feel like you're at the concert. You can actually feel the bleachers shaking and back you as if you're
Wow.
in bleachers. It is like I put this demo on for people, and they are just friggin' blown away. And the only way that you can get this is if you get the history of the Eagles. It's a special disc that comes with it,
Hmm.
and
Okay.
I think you have to get it on Blu-ray. But and then of course the Loggins of Messina Love. It's Santa Barbara Ball. You know, it's only a DVD, but the quality of the audio is just it's stunning, and the jams are great on it. And then there's a bunch of movies I have in there. There's lots of things in there. And the one about if you scroll up um, all the way to, last night in Soho, there's a scene there where they make really great use of Atmos, and it's really cool. It's very retro and fun, uh, with a really cool vibe to it. And the one who directed that is the same guy who did Baby Driver and
Mm.
Scott Pilgrim, and the mixes on those are good also. So I would definitely recommend that to your audience if you want to hear some good stuff. You know.
Well, cool, man. So, where can people go to find your book if they want to purchase your book?
Yeah, so it's discounted. The book is normally $90, and it's on sale through Christmas for $67.50 plus your freight, and all the money goes to supporting home theater, so we can educate the architects and interior designers around the country. And you would just go to acousticsmart.com, or you would look up hometheaterology.net. Home Theaterology is one word, and you'll see it right there. And you'll see testimonials from people in the industry, and you'll be on LinkedIn, and people are talking about it. It's getting a lot of buzz, and it's been a lot of fun so far. It was a 4-year project for me putting this all together, and I hope people enjoy it as much as I, did just putting it together. It's really a labor of love.
Yep. Yeah, I'm almost done reading this book. It's pretty impressive, really cool. And it's been cool having you on here, man. I know you got to leave so you can go watch your movie, a true movie home theater enthusiast. But yeah, you've got some cool theaters, man. It was nice to meet you. Hopefully someday we'll get to meet in person,
Yeah,
and look forward to talking with you again.
right on. All right. Well, thank you, and thank you for your time, and thank you for just to give me my moment here in the sun here a little bit.
Yes, sir. All right,
Um,
everybody. Well, thank you for tuning in to this live stream. I know it's a little bit earlier, but if you have any questions or any comments after the fact, go ahead and leave them down, in the comments of the video. And thank you for everybody for tuning in live. Go check out Richard's book at www.acousticsmart.com, and we will see everybody in the next video.
all right. Thank you.